Hello, how are you doing? My name's Eric Moser, and I'm the Director of Business Development for the Vacation Clearinghouse and Exchange. And I wanted to go ahead and create a webinar. I know a lot of people really don't like talking to a sales rep or talking to a consultant, but they might have some interest. They want to find out some information. So we thought we'd create a venue where you can actually go and find out a little bit more information yourself as far as what we do and how we're able to afford the pricing and to our customers that we're able to do. So we created specifically a webinar for those types of customers so they could get on here and at their leisure kind of find out a little bit more about the Vacation Clearinghouse and Exchange. So that being said, let's get started. First of all, I introduced myself, Eric Moser. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what my credentials are as far as how am I even qualified. So most recently, I spent about 10 years in the oil business. I was a managing partner for one of the largest private oil companies up in West Virginia. We had about 2,500 acres. We had down to 5,000 feet, so we had all Marcellus shale. We had about 80 oil wells, 20 reworked wells, and 5 new drills I did in the last 5 years. And we had 0 violations. Now, why does that make me qualified in the hospitality industry? Well, what most people don't understand is that a timeshare and an oil well investment, not if you're buying a timeshare in order to enjoy it as a vacation, but if you're actually buying a resort and timesharing it out, it is the exact same type of investment as an oil well. As a matter of fact, it's what's called a 1031 exchange in financial terms. Means I can trade it, swap it, don't have to pay interest, capital gains, or anything like that. There's no penalties because it's identical. You can switch them out. I used to have people that own timeshare wanted to trade me for oil well interest all the time. And that's how I came across this. So when I got rid of the oil company, for reasons we won't get into, moved to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and decided that the only other industry around here that had any familiarity with what I had some experience in would be the timeshare business. But I didn't understand a whole lot about the timeshare business. So I was anxious to get in. I knew a lot of people around here were doing very well, making a lot of money. And so I wanted to understand a little bit more about the business. So I do have a Series 3, makes me an expert in going in and assessing cost and value within these types of investments. It's also international currency, international exchanges, and it took me about 2 years to get that. So it gave me another level of competency and aptitude when I got into the industry. So, but I understood I had to learn more about the timeshare industry itself. So, and let me disclose right here, we do not sell timeshare, but this was the avenue I was going to find out the information I had to find out. So getting a job in the timeshare industry in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge isn't hard at all. As a matter of fact, you can pretty much walk into any one of these companies any day of the week because they're constantly turning over. And there's a reason behind that. But I did spend about 6 weeks to 3 months at each one of these companies. Now, I do want to disclose here, I am not affiliated. Do I sponsor or do I work with any of these companies in any form or fashion? I'm just simply want to illustrate that I worked at Westgate. I did work at Exploria. I did work at Holiday Inn, and I worked at Wyndham. And I found out everything I need to know about their point systems, their resorts, their pricing, their margins, how they sell the product. And, I'm going to reserve all my opinions to myself. But let me just say here that my belief system directly conflicted with the way these folks did business. I understood I wouldn't be able to make a career out of selling timeshare because my belief system is once value exceeds price. That's not how this worked. This was an emotional sell driven by getting people to make spontaneous decisions. And I'm under the whole hard belief if you cannot present value to somebody to justify a cost for them to spend their money, then you don't have a product. So, but just for illustration purposes, I did work here for about a year, learning everything I could, and got a wealth of information. Now, outside of the actual resorts that I worked for, I went in and I did all my third-party due diligence. I found out from the ARDA, the American Resort Development Association, they had some of the best material as far as how the products work and some of the stats and things. And Statistica.com, statistic data online also had great information. But what I found was, it was crazy, to be honest with you, because the actual hospitality industry doesn't follow typical trends as far as how you determine the value of your product. Typically, when you determine the value of your product, you looked at things like inflation, taxes, supply and demand, corporate governance, just things of that nature that are going to impact your product. None of those were having any impact on this product whatsoever. As a matter of fact, inflation had stayed pretty steady at 5%. It was actually less than that for about 10 years at 3.5% to 4%. But for this illustration, let's say 5% for the last 40 years, which basically tells us, considering 1963, I believe, Motel 6, a hotel room was $6. That same motel room should be about $48 today based on inflation. In all honesty, they are. You just don't know it. Taxes, well, those should discourage people. When you're looking at 25% tax, then most people would look at that and say, hey, I don't want nothing to do with it. It's not slowing down people at all. As a matter of fact, taxes are going up in the hospitality industry, and the industry is clicking along at growing at about 30% in sales a year as far as the inflation that they're getting on their product. So it must be supply and demand. There must not be enough product there, too high of a demand. Well, that's not true at all either. There are several places you can go out there and find. They say overall in North America, occupancy is around 60%. There's still 40%, vacancy in these rooms. And the number one supplier in the country, which they quit illustrating this on their SEC filings, but the last time I found was around 40% occupancy. So how are they selling these rooms at $500 and $600 a night when their RevPAR, revenue per available room, is around $40 a night? It's actually under $41 a night. I'm going to show you how. And their sales are increasing by 30%. I know the number one company in Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge did $105 million in timeshare sales in 2018, and they're projected to do $136 million in 2019. That's unheard of. So what's driving this? What is driving this just huge explosion in sales? Well, a picture says 1,000 words. If you're looking right here, you see all those young, beautiful faces. Well, those are the people that are buying the product. Now, what I found in the ARDA study was very interesting. What I found is millennials made up of approximately 80 million adults have a buying power that exceeds $200 billion. Well, if you're looking here, 8 out of 10 millennials owners, they find a positive perception of the timeshare industry, which that basically equates to about 64 million people. Moreover, in terms of being open to buying it again, that's 62%. Now, this study came directly out of ADRA. Now, that ADRA study is basically targeted toward the timeshare industry to show them how to refocus their marketing campaigns. So they're focusing this directly to these millennial age groups, 18 to 33, 35 years old right now. And what they found out that's not so nice to be said, I'm not going to be as blunt. They made it a little bit nicer in there, a little bit more diplomatic, but I'm going to be pretty blunt. What they said was these people were more likely to buy a nice car than a house. And what they found real value was not getting married and raising families, but posting pictures of themselves at all these exotic places with all these exotic people. And basically, in conclusion, what they found is these people were emotionally charged, financially naive, spontaneous, and very entitled. They were the perfect market segment for this product because everything that I just said is exactly how this product is sold. They sell it to financially naive people that are emotionally charged, that are very spontaneous and feel they deserve a better life. So it's the perfect storm. So that's driving prices out, skyrocketing for the rest of us. And I'm going to show you how it's affecting all of us. So let's go down here. And I got a quick little scenario here of how the pricing works. Now, this was true in all these resorts. The average timeshare cost in this country is $20,000. That's indisputable. The annual maintenance cost on that's about $800. That's after you've paid the principal. $800 is your annual maintenance above and beyond your principal. Now, you still have to pay the $800 while you're paying off the principal. That $800 never stops. That's indisputable. They finance terms normally about 10 years. So if you take the principal $20,000 and you take that 10 years worth of maintenance, add that to it, you got about $28,000. Now, understand, for this example, I'm not even including things like taxes, interest, membership fees, exchange fees, none of that. That's easily going to add another I would say 25% of this. So you could look at that with a straight face and make this $40,000 not even bat an eye. But let's just leave it here for simplicity's sake. Now, what you're looking at that is you're getting anywhere from 7 to 10 days, vacation days a year. So I just said for this example, let's say 7. Let's say you're going to a higher-end resort and they're a little bit more expensive. 7 days, over 10 years, that's 70 days divided into 28,000. You're looking at average room cost of $400. So what you've decided to do is you've decided to go ahead and mortgage your entire vacation future, and you've decided it's worth $400 a night based on today's pricing. And of course, they're always going to give you the scare tactics that these prices are going to go up. I've heard them double them even as quick as 5 to 10 years, which inflation tells us the worst case scenario is going to be about 20 years. But basically, what you're buying there, and you'll see this star I have here, value season, and there's a very specific reason why. This is a holiday weekend. This is a normal weekend holiday week. This is a normal Sunday through Thursday week. Well, they want to sell the Sunday through Thursday weeks because the aggregators, all the last minute buyers, are buying up the weekends and the holidays. That's their last minute inventory. That's when people get on there and they do the spontaneous buys. So the people that are really planning it out, they're selling them Sunday through Thursday on a normal high-end week, like a normal week in June with no holiday around it. That's what you're basically buying. And then you have your quiet season, which would be going to the beach in October during the week. That would be quiet season. So here's what people are actually buying. Sunday through Thursday, and you can mix that up. You can swap it for a Thursday and a Saturday here, but it gets more expensive. There's all sorts of ways that you can use the points, but for this simplicity of this is what you're typically buying. 7 days, value season, $400 a night. Now, what does that do for the RevPAR, the revenue per available room? Well, it doesn't do anything, because when you walk into these sales rooms, you're no longer based on what the hospitality matrix typically follows, ADR, average daily rate, then our occupancy, average available occupancy, or RevPAR, revenue per available room. You're based on value per guest. So everybody that walks in a very specific resort here in Gatlinburg is valued at $2,392. That's everybody. Everybody that walks in is worth that much money, because they know if they can get in 50 people, so many are going to buy and they're going to sell. And up today, Wyndham just set new sales records in Gatlinburg. They're selling $1 million a day in timeshare. And they're basically selling it to the market segment I told you for the prices I showed you. Actually, this price would probably be a lot higher. I would add conservatively another $7,000 to that. And that's basically the product that they're buying, because they're being told these prices are going to go up. Buy it now, hedge basically. They're not supposed to sell it as an investment, but that's basically essentially what they're telling them. Buy it now, stop the bleeding for the future cost. So let me show you how the industry works. So now you see what the pricing, you see who the target market is, you see how the pricing works. Let me show you how the industry works. Now you have an exchange like anything else. It's it's basically like the Chicago Mercantile or the New York Stock Exchange. They don't have a brick and mortar business, but the exchange is out there where business is done, and over 20 million travelers are working inside this exchange. Then you have people that have access to the exchanges. You have your network providers, which I basically call the distributors. If you look at Economics 101 and you understand how channels work, distributor would typically be your first stop to get the best pricing. Or you go directly to the manufacturer, which I would call the listing companies, Wyndham, Westgate, Holiday Inn. They call them their own variants of what they want to call them. I think they call them the developers, but for this, we'll call them the manufacturers, Economics 101. Then you have your members, which would be considered your end users, your timeshare owners, and your exchange members. You have your aggregators, which would be your online retail, Expedia, Hotels.com, Travelocity, so on and so forth. Then you have your special groups that have access, the news agencies, associations such as churches. And then you have your brokers, which would basically be your travel agencies, your value-added resellers, which would be a travel agency, somebody that gives you additional value, like confirming and booking and things of that nature above and beyond selling you the product. And then you have wholesalers, which are few and far between, and it's for good reason, because the wholesalers are typically, if they're in line with their product, if they're in line with how the industry works, that's where the real value is. And I'm going to show you how. So let me show you how everything works inside this industry. First of all, what you have to understand is the distributors is where you would normally go to get, a better price, especially if you're buying in volume, if you were going to buy product for the next 20 years. But that's not the case anymore. Reason being, the manufacturers own the distributors. Right now, Wyndham owns RCI and Marriott owns Interval International. So there is no incentive to send you through distributors anymore, because what they really want you to do is they want you to buy directly from them, the manufacturer, and they want you to buy timeshare. Now, the manufacturer is where you would normally go to get rock bottom price. That's not the case. What they're doing in the manufacturer business now is they're tying people into 10-year contracts for $20,000 on average, and they're selling this stuff out. That's where they're boosting up the price. $400 a night is in the manufacturer. So there is no more incentive to give you cheapest pricing, and they all could give you access like a wholesaler, but there's no incentive for that. What they'll do is they'll give you what I call they give you access based on conditions, that you go on three individual vacation stays and then you come back, or you go for 1 year and then you come back to look at timeshare. It's kind of a try it before you buy it. We're going to sell you 3 vacations at this cost, and then you come back to us. Then you have your end users, your members. You have your online aggregators, which this is very interesting. I'm going to show you on the next slide how these guys work. It's unbelievable what most people don't realize. But also the aggregators are working directly with the manufacturers, because the aggregators are representing the sponsored information, the sponsored locations, and the sponsored properties that the manufacturers are paying them for. And I'm going to show you how all that works. So now you got a little bit of understanding of how the exchange works. Let me show you how the players work in the exchange. So if you're looking at the game, and you notice here I have VIP and he's got the blue pill. If you saw on the website, the matrix. Well, it's all matrix. Everything's controlled by a handful of corporations. And all the pricing, everything you see is 100% controlled. You're not getting a 10,000 foot view of what everything is. You're seeing only what they want you to see. When you go on to an Expedia or a Hotwire or Trivago or Hotels.com, first of all, understand something. Those are all the same company. Expedia owns all these companies. They're all one and the same. And they all have their own genre that they support. So this might be oceanfront. This might be condominiums. This might be $59 or less. And so what'll happen is when you're on Expedia and you put in different searches, you'll typically see a pop-up if it falls in a genre specifically supported by one of their other SEOs or search engines. Now, if you look at the search engine specifically, you're going to see there's always a sponsored ad at the top. There's always one left, which is creating urgency, and it's always discounted 35%, which typically most of the product that they're getting around $40 or $50 depending on average, and they're marking it up 300%, and then they're showing you a fabricated discount of about 25%. So everything in here is completely controlled. Every product that you see, you're not even seeing the real value. You know why? Because these guys aren't being paid to show it to you. So you'll see here, they're working directly with the manufacturers for spiffs, marketing, price manipulation, and last minute inventory. That is their biggest value, is the last minute inventory. Right now, what they do is that they really get rid of all the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and all the holiday stuff. Now, on the vacation ownership side, where you're looking at the economy or the budget type hotels, well, here's what you're looking at. Comfort Inn, Comfort Suites, Ramada, Days Inn. What you have to understand is these guys are either owned or in business with the manufacturers. These top 14 here are directly in business with Blue Green. These and about 20 more of the budget and low end are owned by Wyndham, and there's a very specific reason why. It's data mining. They're finding out who you are, how often you travel, where you go, how many people you take with you, and then you're going to start getting these nice brochures in the mail saying, well, come here, it's on us. There's always a way to bait you in and to get you interested, and then you're going to have a sales rep sit down, and I wished I could say that these guys were ethical, but they're going to sit down and they're going to beat you up for 3 hours one day, and they're going to do everything in the book to get you to close right then, right there, and make a decision. And it's not going to be just one guy. It's going to probably be about 4 or 5 different people, And the truth of the matter is, that's all these people do. There's nothing else that I've seen that tells me these people are really qualified to do anything else. They're going to tell you why it's the best product in the world, how much money you can save, and then they're going to turn their backs, go around, and trust me, none of these people would have this stuff themselves unless they buy it on eBay for $1, which is exactly what you can do. Before you go buy a timeshare at any of these companies, look it up on eBay. They're on there for $1, hundreds if not thousands, because people are trying to get out of them. They do not want them. So, but that's what these are. This is a reward program. There's going to be profiling and data mining. And some of the companies actually have a terminology for what this is used for. This is for basically corralling people and getting them into the timeshare system. So that's basically how the game works. Now, here's what they're doing. What they're going to do here is they're going to show you, what I'm showing you here is an example from Expedia. And you can see here that this is going to be a sponsored ad. These are going to be sponsored listings. There's the price break. There's right here is the sponsored. Right here is where they're going to have, there's only 2 left. That's the urgency. And so what you're seeing here is exactly what they want you to see. And these prices, $312. Most of these rooms, the RevPAR on them, if you go to the filings, if they're publicly traded companies, are $40, $50. Motel 6 here, the average cost for a Motel 6 in this country right now is $191. Well, based on inflation, that should be around $48. But what you have to understand is Hilton owns Motel 6. They have to prop up these prices to justify you making a decision to buy timeshare at $300 to $400. So timeshare is basically pushing the entire industry. They're artificially inflating the cheaper cost to get it closer to the timeshare so they can get you to justify to make that investment. That's exactly what's going on. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to get away from this. And basically they're selling as a hedge. Let's stop it now. It's going to continue to rise, but you can buy it at today's prices, which are drastically inflated, 200-300%, but you can buy at today's prices and you can stop the bleeding on inflation and things like that in the future. That's exactly how timeshare is sold, which it's all untrue. Every bit of it's untrue. If you actually go in, you look at the filings, you look at these companies, and you look at what their investors are looking at, their prices, they have got 40-50% occupancy and their prices are at $40. But every day in this town, there'll be over $1 million of this stuff sold at $400 to $500 a day. So where's the real value, Eric? Well, let me tell you. You know, I told you that I worked in the oil business for 10 years. Well, I got to understand those contracts very well. And what we had in the oil business was called a joint venture. A joint venture is a right to contract. And for us, it was a right to participate. They had the right to help invest in building the product, help maintain the product, and as a result, they got to participate in the proceeds or the oil that was accumulated by the product. Well, in the timeshare business, it's a right to ownership, or it's a joint ownership product. It's a right to use. You have the right to invest in the product. You have a right to use the product. But in all actuality, you have no rights at all. First of all, these contracts are democratic contracts. They're democracy contracts. So they're based on controlling interest. You have to maintain 51% interest in your investment product or you lose control of it. So that's one of the reasons why they've grouped all these into a point system, into a national pool, so nobody in these resorts understands whose ownership in which resorts. Because the truth of the matter is, if they oversell 51% in a resort, the actual HOA or the people that have ownership in that resort can group together and take over the resort as far as what all the programs and pricing and everything in place around that resort, like taxes and maintenance cost and inflation, all that would be dictated by the 51% owner. So what they do is they sell out 49%. In a lot of cases, they sell less than that, but let's say 49%. That assures them that they have, and guess what? The number one thing for Wyndham it's their management, one of their management companies that manages all their 800,000 properties, rooms, and 9,000 properties. It's big business, so they want to maintain that interest. So they take their 51% and they bundled it up as what we call a value-added product. And so now they've gone to their investors and they said, okay, here's a deal. You can buy this, but as a result, we're going to give you access to everything else around the world. And you're going to get it for pennies on the dollar. But guess what you're getting it for? You're getting it for their cost. Because there's still a cost associated with a room, even if it's empty for the manufacturer. The manufacturer still has to pay for cleaning, taxes, utilities, everything else. So what they want to do is they want to offset that cost. So they bundled it up as a value-added product and they sell it directly to their timeshare owners. What their timeshare owners don't understand is they pay a fee of typically around $200 to $250 annually to have that access, and then they still pay $250, $300 to use the product. They're paying for the actual cost of the product then. So they've bought the timeshare at $400 or $500, but now what they've bundled with that is the actual membership to get the real cost of everything else. As long as they pay for that other timeshare at an way overinflated price of 300, 400%. So what you want to do is you want to find out how to get in the exchange and get access to this controlling interest, because what they're offsetting is their ADR, utilities and taxes and maintenance. They drop it in the exchange and they let all these people get access to it for pennies on the dollar. Now, what most timeshare people realize after they buy timeshare, this is the real value. They actually end up using this more because timeshare doesn't guarantee you availability. Timeshare doesn't guarantee you price. It doesn't guarantee you anything. As long as they own 51% interest, they're 100% dictate all the terms of your timeshare still, and there's nothing you can do about it. The real value is here, because here's where you get access to all the availabilities, all the locations, all the incentives, all the cheap pricing, and that's what we do. Here, we give you access directly to the exchange without having to put a timeshare price tag on top of that, which the 5 million people that bought timeshare out there will tell you, if they could go back and do it again, this is all they'd buy. Period. This is all they would buy. And we have several different packages. We're willing to work with anybody. We have no contracts. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. We have special passes where you can use it one time. We have all sorts of flexibility to work with you. There's no reason you should ever pay $200, $300 a night to stay in any of these locations. So that kind of sums it up. Everything that I think is important that you understand is the controlling interest. That product is the value, and you really need to just find ways to get access to the controlling interest. So there's my 30-minute spiel. I hope that helped you out. If you have any questions, you have my direct line. Call me at any time. But I promise you, I would never sit here and sell something that did not have value. Once value exceeds price, if you're going in the hospitality industry and you want to go ahead and get very affordable vacations at valuable cost, at the real cost, come work with us at the Vacation Clearinghouse and Exchange. This is the best place to do the product. As a matter of fact, I wish that there's 15 people in town today that'll leverage 20 grand, and all they got to do is come over here and work with us, and they could literally have it paid for in a year. Thank you, and if you have any questions, call me at the Vacation Clearinghouse and Exchange, and I look forward to answering any questions for anybody that might be interested in knowing more about us.